Okay, we are live with my good friend Suzy Jurist. Welcome to School of Fish.
Thank you, Jonathan. Very happy to be here.
We were together yesterday, and I mentioned to you that I have this podcast, and it would be great given the perspective that you are able to share, which we'll get into in a little bit. And I sent you a link, and I said, let's schedule something. And you were smart enough. When I looked at the date that was scheduled, it was for today. And so, as you were saying just before, there's no better time than the present. And I believe momentum is so important in business and building relationships. So for everyone's benefit, maybe just give a little bit of color on yourself and the work you're doing at your firm, SJI.
Absolutely. So SJI is a woman-owned design and branding firm. We've been around for 3 decades. We do a lot of work within the entertainment industry. We work with companies like Disney Plus and A&E and Max and PBS. We have 20 people at our firm. We're all creatives, from brand strategists to designers to copywriters and developers. And we love what we do. We feel very lucky to wake up every day and get to do work that's important and thought-provoking.
And when you use the word branding, what does branding mean to you? Because yesterday you did such a great job explaining it to our networking group. How do you define branding?
I think of branding when we use the analogy for a person, how a person dresses, how a person speaks. That is an indication of who they are and their branding. And we do that for companies. So in essence, we're helping companies talk about themselves, and we're helping them, quote unquote, dress, how they look, what their identity looks like, what their website looks like, their advertising. So that, I think, is a nice, simple analogy for the way we look at branding.
And as someone that's so good at branding and dressing things up and understanding really culture and norms and people and all these different things, do you kind of shed the same eye in the world just day to day as you do in the work you do? Are you a branding person through and through, essentially?
Very much so. I often will watch television and see TV spots that I think to myself, how did that get approved? I often look at the politics of our world and think about the messaging being so important and at times not being the right messaging. So I do think that I think about branding with everything that I look at and everything I hear and everything I see.
And is branding something that's been innate or part of your DNA since you were a kid, or is it something that you learned is a skill and you developed being great at branding and all the stuff you described later in life?
So, great question. I definitely think it's a skill that's been learned over time. I'm a printer's daughter. I grew up in a printing firm. My dad owned Graphics for 35 years, and I grew up watching him deal with people, his staff, his clients. And then I got my master's in marketing and decided to go into design because I was offered a job as a receptionist at a design studio. Within 5 years of that, I asked for a partnership because I was bringing in all of the business. It didn't work out. So my dad actually got me a desk at a large agency, also run by a woman. This is now 33 and a half years ago. And I rented a desk for $645. Her staff, who had a little bit of downtime, would do my work that I brought in. And within 2 years, her biggest client, unfortunately, stiffed her for $4 million worth of advertising space. She didn't have the funds to stay in business. She went out of business. I think about 200 people lost their jobs. I had to get my own space and hire my own team. And the client that stiffed her was the 45th president of the United States of America. Wow. So I've had a long history. I know we're not supposed to get into politics, but that is the story of how I started. And once I was on my own, built up the business to, again, 20 people. And we work with some of the most wonderful brands in the world. It's a lot of entertainment brands. It's also a lot of nonprofits, from the United Nations to New York Landmarks to the Jewish Board to Team Rubicon.
No, it's great. And when you look at the way the business used to work, when you kind of started in the industry or started the firm to where it's at today, what are one or two areas that you feel like are the same, or one or two areas that you feel like are entirely different?
So what's very different is the amount of messaging that's out there now. When not you grew up, or I look at when I grew up, I guess, there was a few channels and there was no social media. So the number of messages coming at you was so much less than today. Today, they say you have 2 seconds to get somebody's attention. So I think that's changed tremendously. It actually fits really well into the philosophy of my company. We think everything should be clear, simple, and emotionally relevant to the audience you're speaking to. And in today's times, I don't think anything can get through unless you follow those very simple rules, whether it's the written word or something that's designed. It's really important to be clear in your messaging. And of course, you have to be emotionally relevant to who you're talking to. So I think that's a huge change, the number of messages that are coming at us on a daily basis. The other thing that's changed, and it really very much relates to the entertainment industry, we do a lot of key art, which is advertising for a television show or a movie. There used to be huge posters because we used to go to the movies, and that's how we would see entertainment. Nowadays, with streaming, what we have to design has to work this big as well as, larger. But the reality is most of the times the work that we're creating for a TV series or a movie has to be seen and work, yo small or yo big. So that's something that's also changed.
And when you have the term attribution, which I know in the marketing world is so important, if you do something like what's the impact, like if you're spending money, how many eyeballs did you get, or how many people walked in the door, if it was a movie or streams or whatever, how do you balance your explanation of what you're doing in terms of like just the instinctive benefit that you know is there, whether it's awareness or understanding of something versus actual like tactical, tangible results? Like, how do you navigate those two worlds?
Sure. I feel like my philosophy about that relates directly to my philosophy of branding. Nothing is one thing. We'll do work that's sort of top of the funnel as well as lower in the funnel, which, anything lower than the top of the funnel is very much quantitative driven, but most of the work we do is qualitatively driven. And it's about awareness, and it's about consistency and repetition. And I think they are both equally important. And when I think of branding, it is not one thing. When I think of our brand, it's, how somebody feels when we answer the phone, how somebody feels when they see our email, our advertising, our website, an in-person meeting or presentation. I feel like nothing is one thing, and it's really about the whole pie.
When companies, I've led marketing initiatives where a question would come up, what type of brand are you? And for some reason, we always have defaulted to car brands or hotel brands. What's your approach as it relates to trying to draw from a client or someone that you're helping who they are? Is it that simple of an exercise, or is it more complicated where you really have to dive in? And you mentioned interviews and different approaches that you take.
So I think one of the most important things when it comes to branding a company, especially if there's more than one person at the company, is getting buy-in. And there is no better way to do it but to turn it from the subjective to the objective. And you do that with research, and research can take the many forms. It can be interviews, it can be focus groups, market research. We have found the most wonderful form of research are one-on-one interviews that we conduct. We do it with all of the stakeholders, which includes internal and external stakeholders, depending on the client. It can include the media and the press, government officials. Again, it really depends on who we're talking about. And once we do our interviews, we then come up with a findings document that we present to the stakeholders who are making the decisions. And they see things in black and white that we heard, and we see the commonalities, and we're able to help them come up with what their unique selling point is, what the white space that exists in the market is. And I think that is the best form of how to figure out who that brand is and who they're not.
When you actually build the brand and you start at, let's say, whether it's a new company or existing one,
Mhm.
and you work through your process and you actually deliver the new brand, what gives you enjoyment or excitement in your world? Is it the client feedback?
Sure.
Is it the market and hearing people on the street be like, I love that sign, or I love that campaign? What really gets you excited with the finished product?
It's all of the above. We used to talk about, now so much is remote. And we also work with companies all over the country and all over the world. But I used to say there was nothing better than seeing a client jump up and down in the conference room when we showed them our creative thinking. So, whether that's in person, or it's seeing, their face on a Zoom, or hearing from them afterwards, I think making people happy that we work with and making them feel heard and seen at the end of the day is a really wonderful feeling. We give out just recently popcorn because it turned fall, and we send it to some of our clients, and the notes I get make me so happy. So I think there is that sort of secret feeling of just making somebody happy that really feels good. So it could be as little as sending them something, or making them feel like, we're really understanding who they are and where they want to go and how they want to be seen in the world.
One of our kind of the audience that I believe is listening to these podcasts tends to be entrepreneurial. I am in the world of business development and sales and marketing. How do you balance your time running a company between all the different things? What's your advice to an entrepreneur that's building an agency as to how they should think about allocating their time or their day-to-day? Or how do you go about doing it?
Sure. I go more towards being a parent, and I have great advice for parents. But that's not the question that you asked.
We could go parenting too. Anything's fair game here.
I think in terms of entrepreneurs, the ones I've known, it's a 24/7 job. You never stop thinking about your company or your clients and what you've done today and what you could do better tomorrow. I don't think there's any way to get around that. But from a parent perspective, I know that you don't get back time, and making the time, which is, I think, easier now that there is that hybrid working environment, making sure you make the time while your kids are awake or when they come home from school before they go to bed is something that I feel so strongly about. One, you don't get that time back. Two, it's something that I think helps you get up earlier and stay up later by knowing that you've done what at least was to me the most important thing, and is the most important thing in my life, which is my family.
And I had the privilege of speaking and getting to know your son, who we're putting this on record, is on the path to become a future superstar in the business world. So I'm excited. We could look back at whatever it is, October 18th, and say for his mom to say it's one thing, but I'm going to say it from what we were talking about recently. I think what, as a parent,
thank you.
Of course. And what are your tips in parenting, right? We're all trying to raise good kids, good people, caring, understanding, all the different things. But what is it, parent to parent, do you think that you could pass down to your children that maybe you got from your own father's entrepreneurial world that you think is important for their career journey? What skills or perspective? Yeah.
Sure. looking somebody in the eye, having a strong handshake, being a really good listener, being early, being responsive, always asking questions. And one really simple thing that I've taught my kids to do, which I think is really important, is anytime they work for somebody, whether it's volunteering or an internship or a first job, as soon as you know you are, going to leave or graduate, whatever it is, asking for that letter of recommendation. It's so important to make it easy for the person you're asking the favor of. And there's no better time to do that than when you're about to move on to the next step in your career, because they've just spent some time with you. And I think it's really important to build up those letters of recommendation. We're asked for them all our lives. And I feel like getting into those good habits are incredibly important. And I
One
think
thing that we did that I'm not going to call you out on being a fan of the show. Hopefully after today's interview, you'll be able to watch some of our old interviews. But the last two summer associate classes that we employed at BusyDev, I thought, to your point, it would be great to capture their experience in a recorded video session. So my reference to them was to put them on air, get out of their comfort zone, let them demonstrate what they learned during the summer. And now that is their piece of content that if they want to show someone how smart they are, or how I feel about them as workers, whatever it may be. So that I feel like is unprecedented in the podcast world.
It is.
And if they all go on to be people that maybe we all end up working for because they're more successful than you and I, at least we have their first piece of content on the
love
internet. So, that follows, by the way, we're going to talk about interns. When I was in real estate years ago, we tend to hire people where there was a family connection to the firm. And I felt that when you start in real estate as an 18, 19, 20-year-old and you don't know that much, even if you're smart about the industry, let's look at how they would answer real estate questions going into the summer. So kind of that going in intern quiz or test, and then have one at the end of the summer. And some of them were impressive and they learned so much. And then what we would do is share the results with their parents who we knew through the business. And they were just like blown away. So those are my two intern intern reference moves that I've been making.
That's great.
Funny enough.
Thank you for sharing them with me.
Yes, you could use them. I don't need any accolades. But I would say we know each other through, I think, in an interesting way, vis-a-vis a networking group. Sometimes the word networking group has become such a cliche term. How do you feel that experience that we share together, and we have a great group of fellow entrepreneurs and business owners? What is the secret sauce of a networking group, whatever we choose to call it, that you feel like others could think about or learn from what you and I get to experience through our group?
I never have joined a group for the majority of my career. The reason I joined that group, it was almost a dare. It was an all-male group at the time I joined, and I thought there was something really wonderful, almost for my kids, for them to know that I was going to join a group of, all-male CEOs. And what I find so wonderful about the group is it's less a networking group and it's more that external board of directors. And there is a trust, nobody is there just to get business. Of course, everybody wants business, even if you don't need it. But we've really grown to trust each other. I feel so comfortable recommending the people in that group. So I love that is how it's positioned, and it's true. People are not there to hand out business cards. They're really there to give advice and to listen and to share their learnings. And there's a really nice wide range of people and personalities. And I think we have an amazing, leader in Phil. He's really able to listen to so many different voices and sum it up and take the most important points out of what's just sort of been thrown around and make us all smarter than when we walked in. So I think it's a wonderful networking group.
He's a great facilitator. Maybe we should call him Phil-citator or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Some
I like
playful
that. We'll
word.
do a logo for it so
Yeah,
that he can have his own additional
exactly.
brand.
One thing that I tell people when I look at technology, which everyone's trying to figure out and incorporate it into their business, I used to think like how I was a person that I would be characterized creatively as having a lot of ideas. And I took that to mean that I wasn't executing because I had more ideas than I was able to execute. One of my perspectives with technology is, let's just use ChatGPT as an example, or AI. You could do more, you could execute more ideas by virtue of technology. How do you, as a business owner, doing all the great creative work and branding work that you do, think about technology for your business or for your industry?
So everything we do is technologically based. While we'll sketch on paper, at the end of the day, everything is created on our computers. In terms of AI, we have embraced it. We're not afraid of it. It's become very clear that it is a tool, and you need a wonderful craftsman to be using that tool. We use ChatGPT to help us look at basic ideas when it comes to copy. It is so apparent immediately that that's what it is. It's a tool, and it's only as good as the person using it. There's something called Midjourney, which is a wonderful tool for graphics, but it's all about concept. None of it is about anything past the initial thinking. So we're embracing AI, and I think it is unintelligent to think that we can stay on top of it because it is happening at such a fast pace. Our goal is to constantly strive to be aware of what's going on and know that it's going to happen faster than any of us can imagine.
Great answer. Another topic that I feel like we've talked about, and it would be important to share with others, is the benefit of being in person. Let's just look at our own networking group, doing it through Zoom or in person. The creative industry, I've heard most people lean on the side that the magic of creativity tends to happen in person. How do you think about hybrid work, remote work, in person, in the field that you're in?
Sure. I think like everything, it's not one thing. I think there have been amazing benefits to being able to be hybrid. We have people that we're able to work with in different states that we would never have been able to work with, which is wonderful. We had 3 babies born during the pandemic, which is wonderful. And being a parent who took a way too short maternity leave twice, I am so happy for the people that I work with that they've been able to be at home and see things that I missed. So I think there's wonderful benefits to it, but there's nothing that replaces being able to be in the same room, to run over to each other at each other's desks. So I feel very lucky that we have a hybrid work environment, because I think it's really important to have that quote unquote human touch and be in the same room or bump into each other in the same hallway.
So, as we like to say, serendipity, right? It happens,
Yeah.
tends to happen in person.
Yeah.
Okay, so to be respectful of your time, I know you have, as do I, kind of a crazy day. I'm going to finish the conversation with a new name segment. Given that it's School of Fish and I'm talking to such a good branding person, I'm testing it out with you. You can react. We're going to call it the Quick Catch in
I love
honor
that.
of my last name. So this is the Quick Catch segment, and we're going to go slightly off the professional path and a little bit lighter, more fun exchange to get to know Suzy. 7 to 10 questions. We'll see.
Awesome.
You keep it as quick answered as you want. I
Okay.
think that will just work better. Okay, question 1. One word that describes your approach to sales.
Relentless.
A city in the US that sparks your creativity.
New York City.
Do you prefer a networking event or a one-on-one meeting?
One-on-one.
The most rewarding project that you've worked on.
US and the Holocaust.
What's your Sunday morning routine?
Get up, walk the dog, give her food, work out, have breakfast at my local diner.
Which diner?
Moonstruck.
Okay. What's one risk in your career that you took that you're really happy about?
Leaving my first job and starting my own business.
If you could have a billboard with any message, what would it say?
I'm going to go back to the last question. Probably the
Yeah.
biggest risk was marrying my first client.
Okay. That's
Tell me the next question.
No, if you could have a personal billboard with any message on it, the Suzy Jurist billboard,
Sure.
what would that billboard say?
Absolutely. Be kind.
Who's the most influential person in your life and why?
My family, hands down. Why? There's nobody that I love more or respect more and get more joy out of being a part of their world.
All right, last one. What's a simple pleasure that never fails to brighten your day?
Sure. Blowing bubbles with bubble gum.
All right, well, we know what holiday gift to send you. You're going to get a huge
That would be
bubblegum
amazing.
present from
I
all
would
of
love
our listeners out there. But Suzy, appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
I do consider your aura one of the best of any person I interact with. So
Oh,
it's
thank
as
you.
enjoyable to have this conversation, record it, share it with the world. If people want to find Suzy and SJI, I assume you have a presence on all platforms, right?
Absolutely. LinkedIn is my favorite from a business point of view, our website, but LinkedIn, we really have a nice presence. So, and it's my LinkedIn, Suzy Jurist. So that's a great thing.
Perfect. All right. So I'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for doing this.
Looking
And we're going to
forward
sign
to it.
off.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Suzy.
much. This was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Take it easy, Jonathan.